Hi, I'm here with Rich Christensen, who is the Chief Accounting Officer of TrueBlue. Rich, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, John.
Let's start off with, why don't you introduce yourself and give us some background on yourself and TrueBlue?
Sure. I grew up in a small town in Idaho. Went to school, got an undergrad in accounting and computer information system. Really have had a focus in those areas for most of my career. TrueBlue is the North America's largest staffing company for industrial and on-demand staffing. You know, in 2019, we did about $2.4 billion in revenue. We put about 750,000 people to work. And we did that for about 140,000 customers. We go to market in three different businesses. We have our on-demand industrial staffing business called PeopleReady. And PeopleReady in 2019 put about 350,000 people to work. We also have People Management. People Management is an on-site staffing resource for a lot of larger companies that will effectively just outsource their staffing business to us. And those are usually large, multi-million-dollar engagements. And then finally, People Scout. People Scout is our recruitment process outsourcing business. People Scout's the largest, by volume professional recruiter in the world. And we recruit primarily for Fortune 500 companies and effectively handle from hire to retire the entire recruiting process for our customers.
So I imagine COVID had a big impact on the staffing business, maybe not as much on industrial as other areas, but maybe on industrial. What was it like managing the finances during that period, and what kind of agility did you need to get through? I mean, we're still in, but to get through kind of the depth of the pandemic.
Back when the pandemic hit, the first thing that it created for our teams, both internally, our customers, our associates, it created anxiety. People didn't know what was happening, with the company. They didn't know what was happening with our customers. They didn't know what was happening even for their family. And so probably the most important thing we did right away was we elevated the level of communication. We were having daily calls with our teams and letting them know exactly what it is we were seeing. This was a way that we were just managing risk. We're trying to understand risk first, because if you don't understand risk, you can't manage it. And then the only thing you're managing is a crisis. And so that was really our focus, day one. It was around communication, it was around understanding, and it was around supporting our teams and making sure that they were safe, making sure they were healthy, making sure they understood what we needed from them, and also understanding what they needed from us.
Talk to me about your cloud ERP and how important it was to have all of your finances in the cloud during this period and in general.
We did implement Oracle Cloud in 2018, and we're so glad that we did, because what that's done is that's created this always up environment across Oracle Financials, across Human Capital Management, and across our enterprise performance management. And so this solution that we put in place, effectively it retired 25 subsystems or corporate financial tools that we had brought on over roughly 15 or 20 acquisitions over the past 10 years. It allowed us to retire those and eliminate all of the interfaces, create an application that was effectively 100% available, and it was something that was cloud enabled so we could VPN from anywhere.
Rich, more people working from home, what kind of risk does that create, with all the data and all the documents and all the information, especially in the finance function, kind of flowing over the internet, and how does Oracle help mitigate that risk?
Managing within a virtual environment, what that required was it required effectively creating home base. We had to create a central repository that managed schedules, that managed client requests, that managed deliverables, that managed processes. And all of those things, we had to have a technology like Oracle. Oracle, we invested in, like we mentioned earlier, back in 2018. There's been a half a dozen times that I've, myself or a member of my team have just kind of shaken their head and said, look, if we hadn't made this investment in 2018, this could have been a train wreck. It could have been extremely difficult for us to make this transition, but what we had is we created that home base. We created those standardized processes. We created an always-on, cloud-enabled system that we could always go back and we could use that to enable our performance and also allow all of our counterparts just outside of finance and accounting, also enable them to do their work and to perform to just their highest potential.
Let me ask you about risk intelligence. A recent McKinsey study said that organizations need to establish a culture of risk intelligence to drive growth. What does risk intelligence mean to you, and how have you employed it at the company?
So this is an incredibly important topic for us at TrueBlue. About 10 years ago, we implemented something called enterprise risk management. And within our enterprise risk management model, we look at the business, just the cross-section of our entire business, and we flag the most relevant and the most pernicious risks that exist. And then we set up effectively plans to mitigate those risks. And what that's done over time is it's created a conversation that was led at the board, that was echoed from our executive management, and each of our employees participated with. And so when it comes to expanding, that culture of risk management, of risk information, it's allowed us to invest without having to create and identify those needs outside of just our normal day-to-day, risk planning process. And so that's something that was a huge benefit for us as we entered into, we'll call it this cloud-enabled or Oracle world. Because when we adopted Oracle, we also decided we were going to do a couple of things. We were going to go straight out of the box. We were going to effectively take Oracle as it is and try to limit the number of customizations. We also decided that as these quarterly patches come available, we were going to take them. We weren't going to take part of them or miss one and then try to do a catch up. We were going to build an environment that allowed us to do all that. And then a lot of these financial tools, risk management is a great idea, advanced access controls, advanced financial controls, financial reporting and compliance. As Oracle has continued to invest in these tools and this functionality, we've invested alongside with them. We've brought them on, we've implemented them, and we've implemented them with that view to that enterprise risk management model. And it allowed us to support a lot of our corporate initiatives through this technology that Oracle has brought to market over just the last couple of years.
Tell me a bit more about the Oracle Risk Management Cloud and the specific role that plays in your stack.
It was an incredibly easy decision to move forward with Risk Cloud. TrueBlue is the largest industrial staffing company in the United States and the largest recruiter globally. We have a significant number of transactions each day and each week, each month. And we can't review all those, and look for, issues, errors, whether that's intentional or unintentional. And what the Risk Cloud platform does is it creates a kind of a culture of continuous monitoring. If you start with the advanced financial controls piece, you can set up individual rules, within whether it's accounts payable, whether it's an accounts receivable, or whether it's even within the accounting, the accounting modules, that flags transactions that just don't look right. Entries that are in round numbers or transactions that carry similar things like invoice numbers. And it will flag those for you so you don't have to be doing that continuous monitoring. It'll kick up the exception, it'll get it to the right person, it'll allow you to drill down into the transaction that's suspect, and then just do the analysis yourself. Also, the advanced access controls. As people have transitioned to work from home, and also, as most companies, domestically and internationally, are trying to do more with less, people have had to transition, which hats they wear, which roles they're performing. And so we've had to be pretty dynamic as far as what accesses to grant. And so as we set up rules as far as, what people can and can't do, that same person, advanced access controls effectively runs in the background, and then we'll flag, those role provisions or the provisioning that just creates inherent conflict. And that's allowed us to make those changes very quickly before we create this segregation of duties issues. The last, financial reporting and compliance. This application sits kind of on top of risk management, and it allows you to do all of your business governance and compliance tracking across the organization. It allows you to do things like certifications. It allows you to keep a risk and control library, map those risks all the way down into the, to the application that holds those controls, and then allows people to certify quarterly for those controls that are their control owners for or process owners for. And so we implemented each of those, and they've been extremely helpful as we've been managing our business, especially during the pandemic.
And what do you think the risks are for an organization which doesn't have a risk intelligence framework and doesn't have the software to support it?
Well, the risk that organization is really up against is you're just not prepared. When things happen, and they will always happen, you're just not prepared. So if you look at the technology that enables a enterprise risk management, it's all about performing the assessment, bubbling it up so it's top of mind, getting the right people focused on the right things, and then putting that contingency plan in place once you've addressed the risks, identified your controls, and made sure that you're keeping the company, its employees, the assets, everything safeguarded. Because ultimately, if you're not really focused on risk up front, you're going to be focused on it after the risk becomes an issue, and that's never a fun place to be. So now that we've survived a pandemic, we're a little bit more confident that we can effectively take on anything that's thrown our way. One of the important things about the Oracle's risk module is that it's kind of a journey, right? So if you take the advanced access controls, there's a library of rules that you can implement, hundreds of rules. And so as you grow in sophistication around risk assessment and around building out a kind of a culture of risk management, the tool is there to grow with you. You can implement them quarterly, you can implement them monthly, you can effectively, it's kind of almost like choose your own adventure. You can build at your own speed. And that's something that we're excited about, because as this pandemic slowly but surely moves into the rearview mirror, we're preparing for what's next. And we're using these Oracle risk management tools to help support us in that.
If you were to crystallize all these themes we've talked on today and kind of put them together as a few key learnings for other finance executives, what would that handful of things be?
Well, I think the most important thing is to start today. A lot of the benefits that we're seeing in 2020, they were because of investments we made in 2016 and 2018. And so, right now is the perfect time to try to get out in front of these things. With the technology that's available now, there is a lot of transparency. If you go back to the advanced financial controls that we talked about, that Oracle provides as part of their risk management platform, you can go through their risk library and you can see exactly what it is that you can set up from a continuous monitoring perspective. And you can identify what issues, whether it's fraud related, whether it's just old-fashioned errors, you can identify what savings you'd have, and you can do that business case. So it's important to take a look at it today, manage risk today, don't put it off for tomorrow, because tomorrow, again, you're going to be dealing with crisis instead of risk, and that's never the right way to approach it.
What's next for TrueBlue? What can we expect 12 months out?
Right now, we're investing. We continue to invest in JobStack for operations and making that a seamless exchange for our associates, so they can work with our customers, and we can provide real-time feedback and optimize our delivery of these services. Those are some of the places that we're looking to spend time and spend our investment dollars in 2021. And it's all about optimizing throughput.
Rich, it was a pleasure meeting you.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, John.